Imagine writing a book that becomes so successful it sells millions of copies in millions of countries. And in one of those countries, it's #1 in the bestseller list for over a year. A book that becomes so successful that it garners almost 6,000 Amazon reviews, averaging 4.8 out of 5. I don't know what happened to the other 0.2, they were clearly wrong. A book that is raved about by Hollywood megastars, including Reese Witherspoon, and is not just optioned for a movie, but that movie is already made and wrapped, starring 2 of the hottest young actors of the moment. A book that features characters who millions of people the world over, including all of you guys here, I should think, consider they know intimately. Probably better than they know their own friends, and possibly care about more than they care about some of their own family, speaking personally. A book, in short, that is no longer yours. And then imagine that you decide to write a sequel, and the thread that greets this news on Goodreads features awe, excitement, anxiety, and a gif of RuPaul saying, with more than a hint of menace, "Don't fuck it up." That's what happened to Jojo Moyes when she decided to write a follow-up to her smash hit superseller Me Before You. After You, the story of what happened to Lou Clark after Will Traynor, is published today. Please welcome the brilliant Jojo Moyes. No pressure.
No pressure. That may be the best introduction I've ever had. Can I have that clip afterwards, just to take home? I'm going to do a short reading, a very slightly condensed version of the first chapter, in which we meet Lou again 18 months after Will Traynor. I'm going to guess that most of you know what happened, so that to say after you is not like a terrible spoiler.
Yeah, anyone who doesn't want a spoiler should probably leave now, I think.
The big man at the end of the bar is sweating. He holds his head low over his double scotch, but every few minutes he glances up and out behind him towards the door. A fine sheen of perspiration glistens under the strip lights. He lets out a long, shaky breath disguised as a sigh and turns back to his drink. "Hey, excuse me?" I look up from polishing glasses. "Can I get another one here?" I want to tell him it's not a good idea. It won't help. It might even put him over the limit. But he's a big guy and it's 15 minutes till closing time, and according to company guidelines, I have no reason to tell him no. So I walk over, take his glass, hold it up to the optic. He nods at the bottle. "Double," he says, and slides a fat hand down his damp face. "That'll be 7.20, please." It's 11:15 on a Tuesday night, and the Shamrock and Clover, East City Airport's Irish-themed pub, which is as Irish as Mahatma Gandhi, is winding down for the night. The bar closes 10 minutes after the last plane takes off, and right now it's just me, an intense young man with a laptop, the cackling women at table 2, and the man nursing a double Jameson's waiting for either the SC-107 to Stockholm or the DB-224 to Munich. Around me, the concession stores are closing up for the night, steel shutters clattering down over the overpriced handbags and emergency gift Toblerones. The lights flicker off at gates 3, 5, 11, the last of the day's travellers winking their way into the night sky. Violet, the Congolese cleaner, pushes her trolley towards me, her walk a slow sway, her rubber-soled shoes squeaking on the shiny marmoleum. "Evening, darling." "Evening, Violet." "You shouldn't be here this late, sweetheart. You should be home with your loved ones." She says exactly the same thing to me every night. "Not long now," I respond, with these exact words every night. Satisfied, she nods and continues on her way. Intense young laptop man and sweaty Scotch drinker have gone. I finish, stacking glasses and cash up, checking twice until the till roll matches what is in the drawer. I check the pumps, jot down what we need to reorder, and it's then that I notice the big man's coat is still over his bar stool. I walk up and glance at the monitor. The flight to Munich would just be boarding if I felt inclined to run his coat down. I look again, then walk slowly to the gents. "Hello? Anyone in there?" The voice that emerges is strangled and bears a faint edge of hysteria. I push the door. The big man in the suit is bent low over the sink, splashing his face. His skin is chalk white. "Are they calling my flight?" "It's only just gone up. You've probably got a few minutes." I make to leave, but something stops me. The man is staring at me, his eyes 2 tight little buttons of anxiety. I can't do it. He grabs a paper towel and pats his face. I can't get on the plane. I'm meant to be travelling to meet my new boss, and I can't. I haven't got the guts to tell him I'm scared of flying. Not scared, terrified. I let the door close behind me. What's your new job? He blinks. Car parts. I'm the new senior regional manager, bracket spares, close bracket for Hunt Motors. Sounds like a big job, I say. You have brackets? I've been working for it a long time. He swallows hard, which is why I don't want to die in a ball of flame. I really don't want to die in an airborne ball of flame. I'm tempted to point out that it wouldn't actually be an airborne ball of flame, more a rapidly descending one, but I expect it wouldn't help. He splashes his face again and I hand him another paper towel. Thanks. He lets out a shaky breath and straightens, attempting to pull himself together. I bet you never saw a grown man behave like an idiot before, huh? About 4 times a day. His tiny eyes widen. About 4 times a day I have to fish someone out of the men's loos, and it's usually fear of flying. He blinks. But, you know, like I say to everyone else, no planes have ever gone down from this airport. His neck shoots back in his collar. Really? Not one? Not even a little crash on the runway? I shrug. It's actually pretty boring here. People fly off, go to where they're going, come back again a few days later. I lean against the door to prop it open. These lavatories never smell any better by the evening. And anyway, personally, I think there are worse things that can happen to you. Well, I suppose that's true. He considers this and looks sideways. 4 a day, huh? Sometimes more. Now, if you wouldn't mind, I really have to get back. It's not good for me to be seen coming out of the men's loos too often. He smiles, and for a minute I can see how he might be in other circumstances. A naturally ebullient man, a cheerful man, a man at the top of his game of continentally manufactured car parks. You know, I think I hear them calling your flight. Shame to miss out, he says. Well, thank you, Louisa. You're a kind girl. He looks at me speculatively. I don't suppose you'd like to go for a drink? I think I hear them calling your flight, sir, I say, and I open the door to allow him to pass through. Enjoy those brackets. It's 2 minutes after he has left that I discover he has been sick all over cubicle 3. I arrive home at 1:15. I avoid my reflection in the mirrored lift and let myself into the silent flat. I change into pyjama bottoms and a hooded sweatshirt, then open the fridge, pull out a bottle of white and pour a glass. It is lip-pursingly sour. I study the label and realise I must have opened it the previous night and forgotten to put the top on the bottle. Then I decide it's never a good idea to think about these things too hard and slump into a chair. On the mantelpiece are 2 cards. One is from my parents wishing me happy birthday. That best wishes from Mum is as piercing as any stab wound. The other is from my sister suggesting she and Tom come down for the weekend. It's 6 months old. 2 voicemails, one from the dentist, one not. Hi, Louisa. Is Jared here? We met in the Dirty Duck. Well, we hooked up. Muffled, awkward laugh. It was just, you know, I enjoyed it. Thought maybe we could do it again. You've got my digits. When there is nothing left in the bottle, I consider buying another, but I don't want to go out again. I don't want Samir at the 24-hour grocery to make one of his jokes about my endless bottles of Pinot Grigio. I don't want to have to talk to anyone. I am bone weary, but it's the kind of head-buzzing exhaustion that tells me if I go to bed, I won't sleep. I think briefly about Jared and that he had oddly shaped fingernails. Am I really bothered about oddly shaped fingernails? I stare at the bare walls of the living room and realise suddenly that what I actually need is air. I open the hall window and climb unsteadily up the fire escape until I'm on the roof. The first time I came up, 9 months previously, the agent showed me the previous tenants had made a small terrace garden up here, dotting around a few lead planters and a small bench. It's not officially yours, he said, but yours is the only flat with direct access. I think it's nice. You could have a party up here. I had gazed at him, wondering if I looked like the kind of person who held parties. Those plants have long since withered and died. I am apparently not very good at looking after things. Now I stand on the roof, staring out at London's winking darkness. Around me, 1 million people are living, breathing, eating, arguing, 1 million lives completely divorced from mine. It's a strange sort of peace. The sodium lights glitter as the sounds of the city filter up, engines revving, doors slamming. Several miles south, the distant, brutalist thump of a police helicopter, its beams scanning the dark for some vanished miscreant in a local park. Somewhere in the distance, a siren, always a siren. Won't take much to make this feel like home, the estate agent had said. I'd almost laughed. The city feels as alien to me as it always has, but then everywhere does these days. I hesitate, and I take a step out onto the parapet, my arms lifted out to the side. a slightly drunken tightrope walker, one foot in front of the other, edging along the concrete, the breeze making the hairs on my arms prickle. When I first moved down here, when it all hit me hardest, I would sometimes dare myself to walk from one end to the other of my block. When I reached the other end, I would laugh into the night air. You see, I'm here, staying alive, right out on the edge. I'm doing what you told me. It has become a secret habit. Me, the city skyline, the comfort of the dark, the anonymity, and the knowledge that up here nobody knows who I am. I lift my head, feeling the night breeze, hearing laughter below, the muffled smash of a bottle, the traffic snaking up towards the city, an endless stream of taillights, an automotive blood supply. Only the hours between 3 and 5 are relatively peaceful, the drunks having collapsed into bed, the chefs having peeled off their whites, the pubs barred their doors. The silence of those hours is interrupted only sporadically by the night tankers, the opening up of the Jewish bakery along the street, the soft thump of the newspaper delivery vans dropping their bales. I know the subtlest movements of the city because I no longer sleep. Somewhere down there, a lock-in is going on in the White Horse, full of hipsters and East Enders, and a couple are arguing. And across the city, the General Hospital is picking up the pieces of the sick and the injured and those who have just about scraped through another day. Up here is just the air, the dark, and somewhere the FedEx freight flight from LHR to Beijing and countless travellers like Mr. Whiskey Drinker on their way to somewhere new. 18 months. 18 whole months. So when is it going to be enough? I say into the darkness. And there it is. I can feel it boiling up again, this unexpected anger. I take 2 steps along, glancing down at my feet. This doesn't feel like living. It doesn't feel like anything. 2 steps. 2 more. I will go as far as the corner tonight. You didn't give me a bloody life, did you? Not really. You just smashed up my old one, smashed it into little pieces. What am I meant to do with what's left? When is it going to feel... I stretch out my arms, feeling the cool night air against my skin and realise I'm crying again. Fuck you, Will, I whisper. Fuck you for leaving me. Grief wells up like a sudden tide, intense, overwhelming. And just as I feel myself sinking into it, a voice says from the shadows, I don't think you should stand there. I half turn and catch a flash of a small pale face on the fire escape, dark eyes wide open. In shock, my foot slips on the parapet, my weight suddenly the wrong side of the drop. My heart lurches a split second before my body follows. And then, like a nightmare, I am weightless in the abyss of the night air, my legs flailing above my head as I hear the shriek that may be my own. Crunch, and then all is black.
Anybody not got goosebumps now? What made you decide to revisit Lou and Will?
It was lots of things, really. Firstly, as Sam knows, being a writer herself, when you finish a book, usually you have a kind of edit process in which you fall totally out of love with your characters and start to hate the whole book. And then you move on to the next thing. And because of this strange, overwhelming response from readers to Lou, every day I've been answering emails and tweets and Facebook messages about her life and what she meant to people. And so she never really went away. She never had that chance to disappear. And then I got asked to write the screenplay for the movie. And again, it meant that every day I was asking myself the question, well, what would Lou do now? And what should she do? And finally, I let myself ask myself the same question and woke up kind of 5:30 one morning and thought, oh, hang on, what if that happened? And I'm not going to tell you what that is, because hopefully you haven't read the book yet.
Yeah. You're very quick readers if you already have.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, Me Before You is one of those books. It's become a book which is a phenomenon. How does it feel when a book really stops being yours in that way?
Bloody marvellous. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. You know, I wrote 8 books that sold next to nothing before Me Before You came along. And it is weird because I don't think I felt that way about it until about 2 years in. And then a friend of mine said to me, you've written one of those books. And as soon as he said that, I kind of understood what those books were. And yeah, it's the only book that, you know, people talk to me about. It's one of those things where finally you meet somebody at a party and they ask you what you do and you say, oh, I write books. And they say, oh, would I have heard of you? And I go, oh, no, I wrote a book called Me Before You. And they go, oh, I love that book, or my mum loved that book, or my grandma loved that book, or yeah. And I still haven't seen anybody reading it in public, though.
Everybody
which is
else
so
has.
annoying, because I do want to be that very uncool person and go, are you enjoying it? You know?
I think you're also the only person in London who hasn't seen a Tube poster for After You today. I've seen them all. I mean, also the other thing that made Me Before You Stop Being Yours was the film and Sam and Amelia bringing Will and Lou to life. How was that?
It was completely surreal because, I mean, I'd worked on the script on and off for kind of 2 years, and you're working with the director and you're taking notes from the studio, but it's essentially you in a room, sometimes with somebody else, sometimes by yourself. And then they did what was called a pre-shoot, which was they filmed the scenes where Will is able-bodied because the actor had to lose a lot of weight and lose bulk to then go down to being quadriplegic, Will. And so they said, would you like to come along and see it? And I don't know what I pictured, but I thought it was basically going to be 8 people and a dog and maybe a camera and, you know. And then I turn up at what was called Unit Base, which was a kind of massive car park. And then a limo comes and picks me up. And I'm taken to another location. And basically they shut off the whole back of Moorgate Station. And I walk in and there's 4 rain machines and a stunt bike and a food truck and an ambulance and you name it, and 120 people. And there's Will walking down the street in a smart suit, looking like Will. And I suddenly had this feeling like they're not my people anymore. I'm no longer the expert on these characters because they exist in other people's minds and professional lives as well as mine. And once I got over the weirdness of that, it was just kind of exhilarating because I think if you hated what people had done with it, it would be hideous. It would be the worst experience ever because you would be going, that's not my baby. But luckily, because we seemed to share the same vision for it, it was actually amazing because you'd have people going, actually, Will wouldn't wear that shirt. And then I go, oh, no, you're right, he probably wouldn't. Yeah. I defer to your greater judgment. You know? Yeah.
So After You feels, in many ways, quite a bit darker than Me Before You. I mean, Lou has a fair amount of sex.
Yeah, she has a bit of sex.
Bit of sex. There's some.
No spoilers. I'm sorry, I had to give her some sex. She wrote a whole book without any.
Lou needed a break. It's quite good sex, I've got to say. And since we're on the sex, how do you find writing sex scenes? I hate writing sex scenes.
It's so hard. Oh.
You did that to yourself.
I did that to myself. I realised as soon as I'd said it. It's really difficult. It's really difficult because you either sound like sub-Barbara Cartland, you know, full of thrusting manhoods, or you say penis.
Or like Morrissey.
What was that?
I'm not quoting Morrissey on film.
A bulbous salutation. Yeah. I was not going to go the route of the bulbous salutation. But sorry,
this is pre-Watershed.
I'm ahead of you. Right. But yeah, can I say penis?
Yeah, totally,
I just did.
Yeah,
okay, so but if you actually,
we're all adults here. Yeah.
If you say penis, immediately you kind of snigger as a reader. You're like, she said penis, and it just completely interrupts the flow of the narrative. So it's really hard to do it in a way that doesn't either make people feel it's a biology textbook or kind of take them out of the story. And very few writers do it well. I think Marion Keyes does it really well. Yeah. And I read a book by Sarah Manning, who I also think wrote a really good sexy sex scene. But I think it's one of those things that's much harder than you think.
It's really difficult.
It's difficult, thank you, yes. Yeah. I feel like this is, every book I get a tiny bit sexier. Well, not me, but the book gets me. I get sexier. I'm like Jackie Collins, you know. But I'm trying. But the other problem is, if you live in a small town, is that everybody assumes that whatever you write about sex is something you've just done. So you know, you get the school round, you know, the school mum pick up where everyone kind of, okay. So which explains why there's no sex at all in Me Before You.
So as well as Lou having some quite nice sex in After You, there's drugs and, I mean, revenge porn, for want of a better way of putting it, really. Was it an intentional move to make After You just a bit darker?
No, I didn't sort of set out to write a darker book, and I did try and alleviate some of the darker bits with humour. But the more I thought about it, I thought you have to be kind of true to your characters, and I didn't believe that Lou would be able to walk away from that situation unscathed. I thought even if she did disappear to Paris initially with a kind of sense of excitement, I think if you were with somebody you loved when they ended their life deliberately, it would be a kind of phenomenally difficult thing to get over, because also Lu is a sensitive character. She's not someone who breezes through life anyway. So the idea that she would somehow just move on and thanks, Will, you know, the more I thought about it, it just seemed unlikely. And so I felt that she had to go through her own process to actually accept Will's legacy and move on. But it was not going to be a straightforward process and required other people in the mix. Yeah.
It's actually a really beautiful depiction of grief, I think. Did you research that? Was there some personal experience in there?
Oh God, well, I'm kind of ancient now, and I think you don't get to 31 without, you lose a few people, you know, I don't think, and I think most writers are pretty good at putting ourselves in the shoes of all sorts of emotional situations. I've lost a few people, and I've been close to people who've lost people who are really close to them, so it wasn't a hard thing to imagine. But I think the thing that always surprises me when you write about grief, and I've done it a couple of times in books, is that the characters take longer to get over it than you expect them to. You think that you're going to be able to allocate sort of 2 chapters to getting better, and it just doesn't work like that, not if you're true to the characters. So it became a balancing act to balance Lu's journey out again with not making it just overwhelmingly sad. And so hence, you know, there are other more humorous elements like her family and the Moving On group, which is her kind of grief counselling group. Yeah.
Some of my favourite scenes actually are in the Moving On group.
And mine, it was such fun to write them, yeah.
Did you go and hang out at a Moving On group?
I haven't hung out at a Moving On group, but I have been part of those sorts of church hall groups that, you know, smell of disappointment and bad biscuits. And I just love those situations where you have disparate groups of people who are forced together for one shared purpose, whether it be, I don't know, learning Tai Chi or overcoming some terrible psychological obstacle. And it was one of those weird things where as soon as I realised that's what I wanted to do, the characters wrote themselves. And I actually ended up cutting a lot of the really infantile humour because I found it all got a bit carry on. And there was lots of really smutty, stupid jokes in there, which made me laugh. And then I just thought, oh, Moyes, you're being so childish. Just, you know, cut it out and grow up. So, yeah.
No, weirdly, those scenes in the Moving On group are kind of, I mean, not light relief because it doesn't need light relief, but it's strange that some of the lightest moments are actually in a
grief counselling group. But anybody who's been involved in some kind of terrible emotional thing, especially to do with families, knows if we're English, we get dark humour out of it. Everything is funny. You know, Nora Ephron knew that. She took any situation and rewrote it until it had kind of humour in it. And I think that's what British people do. Anybody who works in the emergency services has the blackest sense of humour you can imagine. And I feel like those are my people. I'm comfortable with those people, yeah.
At one point in the book, Lu finds herself taking responsibility for a teenager. Those scenes between Lu and Lily, I think they're some of the most moving in the book, and they're really written with feeling. Tell me a bit about that character, if you can, without being too specific.
Okay. Lily is one of these teenagers that you think you understand what's going on the outside, and like a lot of my characters, what I like to do is make you think you understand what's going on and then pull the carpet away a bit later on and let you see what's going on underneath. And she was really energizing to write because whereas Lu carries this burden and is sort of had internalized what had happened to her at the beginning of the book, Lily just turns everything outward, and she was really good fun to write because she behaves completely badly, and she's sort of the teenager that I never was quite brave enough to be. And it's very odd. Sometimes you write something and your book suddenly is energized and swept along, and every scene that I wrote with Lily, it was such a useful foil to Lu because the two characters were so different that they butted heads, and there's lots of situations that go a bit awry. But essentially, no, what Lu is able to do is discover what's really going on with this girl, and that was nice to write.
There are definitely moments in those scenes where I couldn't tell whether you identified most with Lily or Lu.
I think when you write these things, you have to identify with every character if they come across. And yeah, I don't think I knew who I identified with more because when I was in Lily's shoes, I was kind of Lily, and when I was in Lu's shoes, I was Lu. And some characters come easier than others, and those two were easy for me to write because I knew them both so well.
Are you allowed favourites?
Are you allowed favourites? Yeah, of course. I'm God. I get to play God. Of course I'm allowed favourites.
Who's your favourite?
Oh, Lou. I love Lou because the more I've spent time with her, and God, that sounds pretentious. I know she's an imaginary person. I'm just,
She's not,
but
she's real.
There's a lack of guile and a lack of sharpness to her that I find kind of immensely appealing in a kind of very snarky world. What Lou will never do is snark at someone. I can't imagine her trolling someone on social media because she's just a decent person, but it doesn't mean that she's a walkover either. She has her tipping point and she reaches it with Lily. And privately I was kind of ready for her to reach a point. Yeah.
It'd be pretty hard not to.
Yeah. Well, anyone who's lived with a teenager knows there is always a tipping point. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have to explain that when you get home? To
my daughter hasn't actually read this yet, but actually she's very good. She's perfect in all ways and nothing like Lily.
Mother and daughter relationships always loom quite large in all your books, and there are several in After You. It's an ongoing theme, is it? I mean, you've got daughters. You are a daughter.
Yeah.
I mean, so.
Well, the last book I wrote, The 1+1, I really wanted to depict a relationship between a mother and her children that was unproblematic, because I get sick of mothers either being dead or really difficult in fiction, because they're generally either one thing or the other.
Yeah.
Or both, yeah. And so I really wanted to write something that was just entirely about a situation where the mother and the child were not the problem. What was going on outside the family was the problem. And it reflected, I thought, what I saw around me, which is mostly children and mothers actually getting on pretty well. Everybody has their moments, but for the most part, it's a kind of pretty good relationship, which is not what you see reflected in culture. But with Lily, what I was interested in terms of her relationship with her mother is this is really one of the themes of this book is how personal fulfillment always has a cost on somebody else. So Will's desire to end his life has massive ramifications for the people around him, and this book looks at members of his family, it looks at Lou's family, it looks at Lou. But Lily's mother has grown up in an age which tells her that you should be allowed to fulfill yourself at all costs, and that's what we're told. And how do you balance that with the fact that that then has a massive effect on your children? So that I think more than the maternal relationship, I was interested in the cost of what happens when you only pursue your path, the path that you feel you're meant to take. And Lou's relationship with her mother. Lou's mother discovers feminism in this book. I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to tell you that, with some kind of comedic and slightly catastrophic consequences. But again, I was trying to look at what would happen if you have this woman who's done nothing but look after her family for 30 years. How does Lou's father respond when she suddenly announces she's not doing Sunday lunch? He's just like a rabbit in headlights.
Yeah, he responds like my dad would have done. I think.
Exactly. But we had a deal. I do the money and you do the Sunday lunch. And again, it's a kind of comedy version of that. But that's the thing I'm sort of interested in.
I mean, all the characters go on a journey in this book. I think it's really
no one gets to stand still.
No one stands still. All of Will's family, everybody in Will's family goes on a journey. Trina. Even Lou's dad.
Yes.
Poor
Lou's
dad.
It involves hair removal. Just going to leave you with that little
thought. Will he or won't he? That's the question. Yeah. I wanted to ask you.
I think I've probably put half the audience off buying the book now. Just like
it's all right. Lots of them have already bought it. You're in the clear. I wanted to talk to you a bit about women's stories, because we read a lot. And we talk a lot, actually, about the way women's stories are portrayed in media, in books, but particularly in films. And the fact that women's stories are so rarely shortlisted for awards for the Oscars. And Reese Witherspoon, I remember her saying, when Wild was shortlisted for Oscars, it was one of only 2 films that was about a women's story. And no films that were about a women's story won an Oscar. And then last week or the week before, Kerry Mulligan has said that she felt like Suffragette would have been made 1 million times if it had been about men. I'm inclined to agree with that. But you really excel at writing women's stories. Is that important to you?
Yeah, it's really important. I'm unembarrassed about being a feminist. I don't really understand women who say they're not feminist, because to me it just means trying to be equal, in all sorts of senses. And for me, I ask myself, if, say, my daughter or any other 17-year-old girl read this book, what message would they take from it? Is it that, this handbag is going to solve your life? Is it that this man is going to solve your life? No, it's not. I like women who do things, not women who consume things. And I guess in terms of how I portray women, I ask myself, without wanting to sound kind of really pious about it, is it good? And would it do good? Or at least would it not be part of the problem? Because I do think we have a problem. And what concerns me as a kind of human being and as a parent is I feel like my own daughter and her friends are having to fight battles that I thought we'd won a long time ago. And so some of Lily's story reflects that. I just think you have to portray women doing stuff. It sounds so simple, but so much of what we see fictionalized on screen is women having stuff done to them, whether it's, sexual or emotional or, whatever, physical. It's not enough to be passive. And actually, I was inspired by characters that did things. My favourite book of all time is National Velvet. And I was talking to somebody today about the fact that it's a really radical book, given that it was written in the 1930s. It's about a young, skinny girl who achieves this astonishing athletic feat against all the odds, which is winning the Grand National. But more than that, she is facilitated by her own mother, who swam the Channel however many years before and won prize money for it. And this mother is not a kind of conventional maternal mother, but she's very loving. But what she does is she makes things happen for her own daughter. And you think, this was made in the 1930s, and where are those characters now? You've got Katniss Everdeen, but there's not a lot of other, female characters who are just out doing stuff and inspiring young women. Possibly not to shoot people, but, yeah.
And film is even worse, I think. It's just...
the Bechdel test is a scary thing,
Really scary. After You is really, really filmic, I think. And that the scene that you've read at the beginning, I remember listening to you read that the first time and thinking, I can see this.
Yeah.
I can see this, and I can see Lu and I can hear Lu. Do you think your writing's been affected by the fact that you've written a script?
Not really. I think it went the other way. I think some writers spend hours and hours perfecting a sentence. I'm a visual writer. I have to run a scene through my head cinematically many times until I'm sure it works. And for me, this book began with that image. Often they do. With Me Before You, the image that book was triggered by was Lu and Will doing their wheelchair dance at the wedding. And I pictured this dance, and then I pictured the conversation they had, and immediately I knew who those characters were. And likewise with this book, I pictured Lu up on a parapet, walking in the dark, and I suddenly understood where she was, and that the fact that you can be supposedly quite professional and quite together on the outside and inside completely in pieces. And that was where I knew I wanted the book to go. But no, I don't think it has changed me. I think that, if anything, the only reason I was able to adapt the book was because I write filmically anyway.
So you've done, 12 books now?
And 2 novellas, yeah.
Done 2 novellas.
So they count. They count.
Yeah, totally they do. So what's coming next, do you think?
I'm off to America for 2 weeks on Sunday to do a book tour there, and then I'm back for a couple of days and doing the Cheltenham Festival, if anybody wants to come up there. And then I'm off to Germany after that, and then hopefully I get a break. I would really like a rest.
I won't bank on that.
So I'll be around from sort of mid-October, hopefully. And then next year I'll start a new book, but I think there's probably not much in my head left at the moment.
Yeah, that's what I was asking, really.
Sort of
What's the
rattling.
next book?
Well, actually, I'm just tidying up a couple of film scripts that I've adapted The 1+1, and I've adapted a book called Paris for One, a little novella to film length, and I'm waiting to hear on a couple of other things, which will take me up to the end of this year. Get me. But most days I look like a sad horse because I'm quite tired. Yeah.
On that note, I just want to say a really big thank you to Jojo. That was
Thank
amazing.
you. Thank you so much.